What does a dairy expert see on the horizon for Vermont dairy farms? What were 2025 success stories, and what new challenges emerged? We're kicking off the new year with a deep dive into dairy today on Across the Fence. Hello, Vermont. I can't promise you that by the end of this episode, you'll understand how milk prices are set because, let's be real, nobody really understands that. But I can guarantee you that by the end, you'll have even more respect for the dairy way of life than you do now. Or I hope so anyway. It's a tough industry, and those in it are fighting not just for their own livelihoods, but really for a Vermont way of life. Joining me today is Whitney Hull, UVM Extension's dairy specialist. She joined Extension in 2021 and since then has focused on helping Vermont dairy farmers improve their management techniques to improve their economic viability. She's also worked in the industry as a dairy nutritionist and just finished her master's in animal science at UVM. Whitney Hull, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, all right, so milk prices. They're not good. Talk to us a little bit about what's going on with milk prices.
Yeah, so we had a couple of good years of milk prices. Dairy milk prices are typically cyclical. We'll have a cycle where we have a higher milk price for a few years and then it will drop out a little bit. And a lot of things go into that, but I think one of the leading factors right now is that we've seen an increase in processing capacity, and so a demand from those processors for more milk. And so dairy producers have met that demand by adding on more cows and producing more milk and getting really efficient. Unfortunately, we're at a little bit of a lag with some of those processors not being quite ready to accept that milk yet. So I think that's a really big contributing factor currently. And we're milking more cows than we've milked since 1993. And more efficient at milking those cows too. So we're getting a higher yield per cow, but we're also milking more cows. So that all leads to increased milk on the market with not always a place to go from a consumer export standpoint.
Is that part of why the milk prices become depressed because there is more milk on the market?
That's part of it, yeah.
That's one part of it.
One part of it.
I know this is complex. I'm not going to wade deep into how the milk prices are set because that does sound extremely archaic.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, but I feel like when you and I talked, that one of the most important pieces about the milk prices that I took away was the fact that dairy farmers are price takers, right? Do you want to explain what that means in terms of the industry and how that impacts farmers?
Yeah, so dairy farmers don't have a lot of control over the price that they're paid for their milk. There are some things that they can do
That's so frustrating.
Yeah, really frustrating to me as a consultant in the dairy industry, but definitely to a dairy farmer that has to kind of ride this wave constantly.
And
so
it doesn't necessarily reflect how much you are doing on farm.
Correct.
Yeah. That's aggravating. So that's because of consolidation. What are the factors that are driving the fact that they are price takers?
I mean, it's been that way, I think, for
okay, now
for
we can
years.
talk about monopolization and antitrust issues. And there's a lot of factors.
It's been that way for a really long time.
Yeah.
But dairy farmers are just kind of at the whim of what those prices set at that national level are.
Yeah. But it sets up a situation where there's just never enough money coming in from shipping milk, right? And so farmers have to get innovative on farm to try to figure out ways to either decrease costs or increase revenue. Do I have that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so what are they doing? Because this gets into a little bit of what have you seen? What have you seen in 2025? What's happening on farms right now?
So I think what's really exciting about the dairy industry right now is all of the technology that's coming into the farm. And some of it's been around for years, but it's sort of getting a second life. So things like automatic milking systems, or what most people would call a robotic milker. They had a big surge in Vermont in 2009, 2010.
Is it because there were similar conditions as this that made the surge the last time?
Yeah, for sure. We had really low prices in 2009, 2010. I think people saw them as a way to control some costs, maybe be kind of at the cutting edge of that technology. And then we saw a little bit of a dip.
Why was the dip? I'm curious about that because it seems like a big investment in order to do the transition to bringing robotic technology onto the farm. So why back away from it?
I think some of the people that put them in initially were older farmers that were hoping it would attract a second generation back.
Oh, okay.
And technology wasn't always the right fit for them.
Okay.
And I think some people found that out once they installed them. This doesn't necessarily work for our lifestyle and isn't quite working how we hoped or thought it would, and so pivoted away. Some people got out of the dairy industry altogether. Some people went back to milking in parlors.
Another constant trend, yeah.
Yeah, so we're kind of seeing this second wave, and I think it's really about, can we bring that next generation back to the farm? Is this something that will hopefully make them want to stay? Could it attract, a new generation that didn't grow up on a farm? And a way to just get really efficient. So we have, a declining workforce that wants to milk dairy cows, and I think this is a way for farmers to be able to control for that piece of it. At least we have a machine that will show up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and will milk the cows.
Yeah. So among the things 2025 trends, ongoing struggle, issues with farm transition, so robotics coming in, offering some ways to maybe kind of mediate some of those situations. That's something you think will continue in 2026?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think we are continuing to see more innovation on farms. So whether that's out in the field through things like, GPS in the tractors, or different ways that we're managing our crops, to in the barn. So there's, been a trend of animal health monitoring through things like wearables. So essentially like Fitbits for cows.
Wow.
That, can measure rumination. They can tell us things about animal health that really are just like a second set of eyes. They're an employee to the farm. And it allows small farms, big farms, all sizes to be able to incorporate that piece and to have constant around-the-clock monitoring that really improves everything on the farm.
Yeah, and it's still hard to get into dairy too if you are not already in dairy.
Yes.
Yeah, barriers to entry, like what's happening on that front?
Yeah, so barriers to entry, it's a huge investment cost to get into dairy farming. It's not just the infrastructure, it's the cows, it's the land, it's, in more recent years, actually having a milk contract. So that's not always a guarantee when you're getting into dairy. You have to ensure that you've got somebody that will come and pick up your milk unless you're going to process it all yourself. So yeah, there's a lot of barriers to entry for getting into the cow dairy market. Yeah.
So it feels like that's all kind of the bad news, the grim news, right? things in 2025 are like, this is worrisome, but extensions in the improvement business, right? So let's talk about some of the things, because there were some things that you also are really optimistic about that you hope will continue to catch on in 2026. I guess robotics and the technology, we've already talked about. What else are you expecting to see, do you think, in 26?
I think a lot of farms, because they're so tired of being price takers, are trying to take back a little bit of that risk management, and they're getting into value added products. So whether that's processing a little bit of milk, or making that milk into cheese or some other product, we're seeing a lot more farms try to add that in as a way to just control.
I read that about almost 75% of the milk is in Vermont, fluid milk, actually ends up in cheese.
A lot of it does, yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know if the 75, I don't know that statistic.
That's a stat from Progressive Dairy, but there you go. I could very well be wrong. But in other words, what it pointed out to me, because we talked about this, it was about farmers in part. One of the things that they're doing is more on-farm processing, more value added, bringing people to the farm, like just finding new ways to get those revenue streams going.
Yeah, absolutely. Diversification, I think, is another way we could talk about it.
Speaking of which, goats.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting form of diversification. Yeah. And there's some interesting things happening with goats. You want to talk about it?
Yeah, we're really fortunate to have Vermont Creamery in Vermont, and so they take fluid milk from goat farms in Vermont and in Canada, and they process that into
Vermont,
cheese.
Mostly
Vermont.
Yeah. It's how many Vermont goat dairies are involved?
I think we have 12 Vermont goat dairies that are shipping to Vermont Creamery right now, and they're looking for more milk. So it's, for goat farmers, it's an exciting time to be a goat farmer. Yeah. There's also a lower investment cost to get into goat farming. You don't typically need as much infrastructure, as much land.
You're not stuck in that, I have to be a cow dairy farmer in order to be a cow dairy farmer.
Yeah, you don't need as much equipment. that being said, it's not as easy as she's a small cow. They're very different animals. It's, you know, a steep learning curve as far as what does that animal require that's different
This is
from
the
a
study
cow.
that Extension was just doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So we just, we're in the process of wrapping up a study where we went on to 16 goat dairies in the state and we did a full milk quality audit. So we observed their milking routine. We tested things like pulsation and vacuum line pressure, did an analysis of like their wash system. So how efficiently is that system cleaning, milking units, milk line, all of that. And it was really interesting. And one of the things that highlighted was how even in a state that has a lot of dairy, how few experts there are that have a lot of experience with small ruminants, so goats or sheep. And so really trying to build that technical support system up for those small ruminant farmers has been one of the things that's come out of this study.
Yeah. Well, I think that's fantastic. It's a great resource now to be able to offer to that group of, you know, growing maybe hopefully field up. Because this is getting some support from the state as well, right?
Yeah, the state has been really passionate about trying to help stand this industry up and support Vermont Creamery in their search for more goat milk in the state. And it's also afforded these goat dairies the opportunity to expand and to milk more goats if they're interested in that. And I think on the flip side, the goat dairy farmers are finding out actually how much they have in common with their cow dairy counterparts. Like how, you know, how similar many of their struggles and complaints are. But yeah, it's been a really fun project.
Oh, that sounds good. Extension is also hopefully going to have more services available to the cow dairy as well in 2026. I think you're getting some training now, right? Like tell us what's going on there.
Yeah, so
basically we're filling a gap that Cornell used to provide, right?
Yeah, and Cornell still provides it through quality milk production services. They have the ability, mostly in New York, to go on farms and do these milk parlor quality audits. And it's something that I've gotten really excited about over the past couple of years, and I think a huge need on all kinds of dairy farms across the state. So in 2026, I'll get some training to be able to go on to both cow and goat dairies and offer that service, hopefully in the second half of 2026, which is really exciting.
Yeah, that is exciting. Quickly, because we only have a few more, like about a minute, what is your hope for 2026 for farmers?
I think that we continue this trend of innovation because I think it's really allowing farms to become more efficient, but also really kind of bring everything else along with it. Like the management comes along, the animal health comes along. It's really helping them to be leaders in the industry and kind of get out in front of some of those mandates that have come in the past.
Fantastic. Hopefully good things.
Yes.
Whitney Hull, thank you for joining me. I enjoyed talking with you today. And as always, Vermont, thank you for learning and exploring with me today. And thanks to the team that makes Across the Fence possible. I'm Amy Finley. This is Across the Fence. Come back and let's learn and explore again tomorrow.